Welcome back to Get Your House in Order. I'm Elke Rubach, and I'm joined today by Anna Blue. She's the co-founder of Blue Moss Group. Anna has spent her career helping organizations move beyond slogans and really aligning them with purpose and with their actions. Why does this matter to you? Because whether you're running a business, a nonprofit, or even just managing your own financial life, it's easy to think that your house is in order when it's not. In this conversation, we're going to talk about many things, and we're going to unpack what real alignment looks like and why ignoring purpose can really cost you more than just money, and what practical steps you can take right now to get ahead of the curve. And Anna will help you bring the hard truths, but also the playbook. So let's dive in. So Anna, you've built a career at the intersection of purpose, business, and community. But let me ask you this. Why do so many leaders think that their house is in order when it's really not?
I don't know that people know what having their house in order means. I feel like oftentimes we are just trying to get by and sort of figure things out on a day-to-day basis. I know I feel that way quite a bit. And then I think that sometimes people just have their heads down and their fingers in their ears and they don't want to do the hard things. And I will say, as much as I love this rise of like the self-care movement, and people think that means spa days and massages and, things like that. Like self-care is often doing the hard things, and getting your house in order is certainly one of them. Like for me, that was spending way more time than it should have just putting a budget together. I am one of those people that never wants to look at my bank statement. I just don't want to know. Then I complete ignorance. And so getting your house in order oftentimes means doing the hard things, the things that aren't comfortable or that you don't know how to do. And people would rather push that till later or think that time is this thing we have in abundance. And then next thing you know, life sneaks up on you.
And it's fascinating because I find when we're doing the plans for our clients, we want them to really sit down and find stillness and really analyze what's important to them. And sometimes you find, the couples agree on many things. Sometimes they agree on most things. Sometimes they completely disagree on everything. But at least when it comes to organizing their finances, they're giving meaning to their wealth based on what's important to them and not necessarily things that are dictated by some funky rule of thumb that, if you save 18%, you'll be fine and so on. Mm-hmm. But when you work with the companies, finding their purpose and their mission driven and their values, what tells you that there are problems? What are the red flags where you feel that people are completely lost and that they say they have a ESG structure, but they don't really?
Yeah.
How do you know?
So the biggest flag for me is that people don't recognize where impact and business intersect. So oftentimes companies, even companies who have wonderful values, who are investing in impact, do it very separately. So, they're the companies that might hand out turkeys at Thanksgiving to people who need them. They might be putting backpacks together with a local nonprofit for kids to go back to school. All very worthy things, but that doesn't actually help your company other than from a culture standpoint, which is important. But you can do things from a culture standpoint that also increase retention of your employees, that increases your brand sort of reputation and influence, and that increases your profits. And I've yet to work with a company that does not want to be more profitable. That seems to be the end goal. And so what folks tend to miss is that their CSR is typically over here, and then their business strategy is over here. And it's when you merge them that you find out that like that intersection of doing good and business strategy actually propels the company forward. So that's where I start is how are your like values and your impact aligned with your business strategy? And usually I get sort of like, what? I'm supposed to do that? And then we can go from there. And like, how do we pull those values into the business strategy? How do we pull your impact in so that it all aligns and it makes sense?
And I find, generally speaking, people want to do good. People want to make it a better place. People want to, improve society. I mean, there are the bad apples, but let's ignore those. But you've helped organizations shift from good intentions to actually having measurable impact. But if I'm a CEO listening to this right now,
Mm-hmm.
what's the uncomfortable truth that I probably don't want to hear about? How I'm aligning my brand and my actions?
It's a tough time right now. So the reality is a lot of CEOs don't even want to touch this conversation with a 10-foot pole right now. They don't want to have to talk about impact because we live in this very convoluted time where any time you talk about impact or doing good, people automatically think DEI. When people think DEI, they think backlash or I'm going to lose shareholders or people aren't going to buy my product or whatever it is. And so we're in this like messy time where there's not clarity around words. Doing good and social impact don't have to have anything to do with DEI. And to be perfectly honest, most corporate DEI programs are BS. They don't actually work. And so like, I'm not happy about the way that things have moved from a conversation around the importance of diversity because there's so much data that supports why that matters to business. But if we get rid of and restructure programs to be programs that work, I would be all for that. But right now, people are just staying away from talking about doing good because they don't know how that's landing with people. Doing good and like impact and benefiting your community, benefiting your employees, benefiting your consumers seems to have taken this ugly turn where like that means something else, but it doesn't have to mean something else. We've seen, you buy a water bottle and it provides water in developing countries. We've seen you buy a pair of shoes and it provides somebody a pair of shoes. I mean, there's really, really great ways to make an impact that are tied to business profits that people just right now want to stay away from. And that's the one thing that I would say to CEOs is like, come on back. You can still have this conversation. You can still do good. And I get you want to be careful about how you do that.
And I find there's a serious fear about offending everyone and anything because everything you say can and will be misconstrued and attacked and so on. But at some point, people need to take a stance. You cannot be pushed around by, if I say this, somebody's going to be offended. If you're convinced and you know that you're not hurting anyone, you're not killing anyone, you're not stealing from anyone, and you're making it a better place, and it's a little, you're not going to change the world with one movement, right? Yeah. But I think when you know that something has to happen and you want to bring it to life, you need to take a stance and you need to really stand by it. Because when a leader ignores purpose or equity and strategy, then it becomes too late. Everything kind of like turns into a snowball, and then there was no equity, there was no purpose, and nothing really happened, and everybody still hates you, right? Yeah. I think I was having this conversation yesterday, and I say, gender equity and different colors matter and different size, everything matters. I think everyone matters equally, right? But when it's mandated top down, it's really hard to achieve. Yeah. I'm a firm believer that it starts at home. And you have to teach your kids that to be colorblind, to be religious blind, to find the good in people, make it a better place, and so on. And as a leader, when you're carrying so many people under your wing, whether it be 2 or 3 employees or thousands of employees, you cannot just be focused on growth and profit. So how do you reframe that conversation? Ignoring purpose is actually a financial risk. Yeah.
I mean, you point to all of the business cases and all of the data and research that exists that supports that. I mean, the reality is, in this day and age, like you have nearly 70% of people say that they want to work for a company that aligns with purpose, that aligns with their values. People are expecting companies to take a stand on issues and not hide in moments like this. And so, like, consumerism certainly demands it. People want to see that. It's been studied time and time again. People like to shop their values. We have so many choices now of all of the products that we can buy, and people tend to move towards the one where they believe in what the company does, or they believe in what purchasing that product is going to do. And so when you see that's what the general public wants, regardless of who they vote for or how they think or any of those, they want to know that if they're giving their time, their energy, their money, whatever it is, to a company, whether it's as an employee or as a consumer, they want to know that it's worth it, that like it is worth the greater good. And there's so much data that points to that. So you could ignore all of that and just get caught up in this political rhetoric, but you're not going to survive. And the companies that survive are the ones that don't hop on the pendulum and swing along with all of the rhetoric that's happening and swing all the way this way and now cancel all of that to swing back this way. Like, we're always going to see that in the political landscape. We always have, right? And so if you ignore that and just lead forward with like thinking about your business and thinking about your purpose and where those two intersect, then you don't actually have to worry about all the other stuff that's going on. And study after study after study shows that that's what people want.
And you can't do it overnight. Like, you didn't get here, in 2 weeks, you're not going to change this in 2 weeks. And that's what I tell people when it comes to organizing their finances. They come here, they have an entire mess, complicated structures. And I'm like, okay, where do we start first? Because we can't do everything at the same time, right? Let's little by little. But I mean, at the end of the day, many of our listeners, most of our listeners are high achievers, alphas, men and women, but we're stretched thin. Mm-hmm. So how can we create alignment in our organizations without burning ourselves out and adding more stuff to the team, so the team comes back and says, now what?
I mean, I believe that the truth is people will always prioritize the things that matter, right? So if making your company a place that people want to work, a place where people are talking kindly about it on Glassdoor and on Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it these days, and on social media, and you want that brand reputation and you want to have lower turnover, all of those things, like, then you're going to prioritize it. Then it's going to be a priority. And again, if you tie it to your business strategy, then it just becomes authentic. Then you're not just burdening people with like, oh, add this on top of. It's actually a part of. So as you're going into Q4 planning for, to think about 2026, and you're thinking about your budget and you're thinking about your KPIs and your strategic plan for next year, this is a great time to just integrate that conversation about the social impact component. It doesn't have to live as a standalone with a CSR team who operates over here. Like, bring all of that together and just include it in the same planning that you were doing anyway. And I think that's the best way to bring it in and to introduce it. This is just part of what we're doing now. And in the same way we're setting OKRs or KPIs or whatever words and vowels people use these days for these, for these certain goals, like, this just adds in and it just integrates fully. And that's the best way to do it. Then it's not actually more work. It's the same work. It's just got a different angle to it.
And it's part of the plan. And you said my favorite word, KPIs, because you can throw money at things endlessly, money that you don't even have, right? Just to make it equity or whatever. And if you can't measure it, how do you know it's working? Yeah. And who do you hold accountable?
Yeah.
So you're on global stages. You're really around the world on so many forums, and you're talking about equity and justice and purpose. What are you hearing now that should scare leaders who are still doing business as usual?
I think what I'm hearing, and we touched on it a little bit, is I think leaders are in a place of feeling like they can't win, right? They're going to make somebody mad. Somebody is going to take something the wrong way. And so I have a lot of folks that come up after I get off stage, and they'll be like, I love what you're talking about. I would love to integrate this. I want to, bring this into my company or talk to my CEO about it, but we're just not talking about anything right now. And so I think there is truly, to your point of, in the question of like CEOs, leaders are paralyzed right now because it's so hard to make everybody happy. And I think that's where I just lean back on but if this is part of your business strategy and it aligns with the values that you've already set as a company, most companies have core values. Most companies have already decided who they are. And this just helps you bring that into the business piece. And then again, it gets outside of the political rhetoric. And so I think that paralysis, what I want them to understand is that the thing that I wish that they were afraid of is what the fallout of this is going to be. If you are ignoring the fact that people want to work for purpose driven companies, if you are ignoring the fact that people want to buy from purpose driven companies, and what that purpose is can be defined in so many different ways. It doesn't necessarily mean gender equity or racial justice. It doesn't necessarily mean sustainability and climate change. Like, you can decide what that means, but what you're going to see is that people won't want to work for you anymore. They won't want to be part of your company. And the job market is tough. So they may not quit. It might be one of those sort of like internal resignations where they just show up and half-ass do their job, but they're not really giving of themselves in the way that you need them to. So that's what I wish CEOs would be afraid of, is like, your paralysis is not helpful because the fallout is going to be greater than what you expect.
Oh yeah, and then those teams where you just see that they go and literally punch cards. I don't know if you remember the cartoon with Wile E. Coyote and the sheepdog, and like, and then you check, and they fight all day, and then they check out, and then they have friends again, and they check.
I love it. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that also reminds me, so many people see retirement as their end goal, and now retirement is no longer what it used to be. Because
No.
you used to retire at 65, you live to 70, man, good run. But now you have to figure out what your purpose will be for the next 30 years. And if the prior 60, you were stepping on heads and ignoring purpose,
Yeah.
and that's not a pretty picture.
Not a pretty picture. And it's just not a good way to live. Like, who wants to spend their post work days or even while they're still working but like, who wants to live in just this place of like narcissism and selfishness and anger and getting caught up in all the news cycles, and like, people aren't happy right now. Folks are not happy with all of the negativity, with all of the hatred, with all of the stuff that's out there. That's not actually what people want to consume on a daily basis. And who really wants to? Like, who wants to be that way? And some people do. Some people are fueled by that. And I personally have never been a person that is like fueled by what's broken. Like, I'm fueled by how do we fix it? So like, let's band together. Let's do the things that we need to do. Let's move things forward, as opposed to like all of the things that we hate. And I wish that was the norm for folks right now. But yeah, people have a lot of time to live with themselves. You want that to be good.
Yeah, the problem is that on both sides of the spectrum, the headlines are terrible. Anyway,
Yeah.
so I'm a big fan of Ted Lasso. I don't know if you've seen it.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan, and anyone who hasn't seen it or heard of it, they have to.
I actually just rewatched it for that reason, because I was like, I need to bring that like level of humor and joy back into my life. So yeah, it's a good one to go back to.
Is it a literary treaty? No, but it's funny and it's good. It's happy.
Yeah, and that's what we need. We need happy. We need optimism. Like, I wish more people walk through the world like Ted Lasso does.
But for example, in an organization today, what do people need to do to stay relevant over the next? I mean, planning for the next decade is ideal. We know things shift fast, but
Yeah.
what do people need to do to remain relevant? And what's the one area they need to get in order today, so they're not left behind?
Yeah, I think relevance is about authenticity. Like, if you are who you are and you show up in the world as a leader, as a company, the same way, regardless of what the headlines say, I think that's how you stay relevant. We saw it with certain companies when the racial justice uprising in 2020 happened. What a lot of the attention was pointed to is like, you had all these companies suddenly making pledges, but many of those companies had been silent before. They hadn't had this conversation. This wasn't part of their internal culture. And now suddenly they're just putting out random statements and making these empty pledges. And the companies that really got folks behind them were the ones that had already been tried and true, that already supported the people that they supported. They were already showed up as an authentic and relevant company. And so I think that that's how you maintain relevance through all of this, is to like, who are we? What do we believe in? What do we value? How do we live that? And that is regardless of who is in office. It's regardless of what are the headlines, what shareholders are saying. Like, it is actually just about living as a leader authentically and living and therefore leading your company authentically. And I think that's the way that you push through all of the other stuff. Like, you trudge through the mud just by showing up and doing this well and doing it with purpose.
I mean, obviously, the size of the company will dictate
Yes.
how often you can do it. But what would you say is a healthy exercise? The same way I tell people, look at your will every year, look at your plans every year. Would you
Yeah.
say quarterly, annually, or
Yeah, I mean, anytime you're looking at your business strategy, that should include your impact strategy. I mean, I think that, and that ranges for some companies do that every quarter. They go back into sort of where they're supposed to be and what their KPIs are and track against them. So if you're doing that for your business quarterly, this should just be a part of it. Again, it's that integrated solution and how those things, how purpose and business can go hand in hand. So you don't have to have like a separate reality check on this. It is really just part of anytime you're maintaining your business strategy, you're doing the same.
so if leaders listening today did a quick audit of their own house,
Mm.
what's the first drawer or closet you tell them to open? What's the area that they're most likely ignoring?
I don't know that it's the area I think they're ignoring. I think that I mean, you have to start inside your house before you go external. So before you start talking about anything or taking a position externally on anything, or even aligning on a public partnership with a nonprofit or anything like that, you have to make sure that your culture internally aligns, right? So are you taking care of your employees, right? You can't talk about gender equity if you don't have pay equity within your company. So are you like, how does the internal messaging look? How does the internal culture look? How do your employees feel? Everybody should be doing an employee engagement survey. Not everybody likes them. A lot of companies are like, don't really care. I don't want to know what my employees think. We are who we are. Either they work here or they don't. I don't want to know. And they also, and sometimes they want to know, but they don't want to be expected to fix it, right? So if you're hearing sort of the same themes and you're an employee and you're asked for your feedback every year and the same survey results come out every year and the company does nothing to address them, then now you're just angry that they're even giving you a survey. Like, why are you asking me if you don't care? So you have to look at the inside culture first, where your employees, meet them where they are. What do they care about? Right? Like, why did they choose your company? Why do they show up every day? Why are they doing this work for you? What do they want to see? What are the little things that you can do to further help your employees develop? All of those things, but like, you have to start with the house before you can hit the neighborhood, right?
And in your experience, who usually realizes that the house is not in order? Like leadership, staff, the outside world, or how do you find the time and what makes the bomb go off?
It's almost always staff. I mean, leaders often have a very, very misguided idea of what their company culture is, because they sit removed and they are surrounded by people who tell them what they want to hear. And they're often removed from the everyday employees, those who are just out of college, who may have just joined the company. Now, again, to your point, if you're a 10-person company and you're small, you might have a more connected and on the ground approach. But I've seen companies of 30 people where the leader was just completely disconnected because that leader hadn't created an environment where employees felt that they could give him or her feedback. They didn't feel like they could actually speak freely. And so if you aren't a leader who's open to understanding the culture and to taking feedback without, retaliation or punishment, then you're just never going to know. So I often find that CEOs or executive leaders, those in the C-suite, are pretty disconnected from what the real company culture is. So if you want to know the truth, it's with the employees. And that's why that employee survey, because it's anonymous, is typically an eye opener. And a lot of times companies are like, whoa, that's who we work like, that's what's happening here. And they don't want to know.
Exactly what I tell people. When you don't know, it's fine. But once you know that you don't know, you have to fix it
Mm-hmm.
because it's going to come back and bite you.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
problem can go away.
Yep.
And we often talk in my world, we often talk about risks and dollars and cents. What's the hidden non-financial risk leaders carry when their house isn't in order, when their values are not aligned, when they haven't talked to their employees, when they haven't communicated properly with their network.
Yeah. I think it goes back to your question about relevance. I mean, if you aren't prioritizing it and you're disconnected from it, one, you are far more at risk to just respond to whatever's in the headlines. And that is not an authentic way to lead. And people see through that. Younger generations in particular will call you out. They have no problem being like, oh, look at you coming out of left field with a perspective you've never had. And it doesn't match what the reviews about you from your employees say on Glassdoor, right? And so if you just if you take this as part of your business, if your purpose is part of your business, then you are shielded. And it's the ones who don't, who then find out the hard way because they're jumping from headline to headline and they're just being reactionary and performative as opposed to like actually living with purpose. That's where the danger is.
It's fascinating. We're all trying to go fast, but at the end of the day, you just have to slow down and go back to basics. And that's for
Yeah.
purpose building, value setting, families conversations, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So, for executives, founders, boards listening, what's the one simple, practical step they can do or take to this week start getting their house in order?
Yeah. Look at your company values. If you have set core value, well, first of all, if you haven't set core values as a company, that's where you need to start. Like that is every company should have a set of core values. We have them as individuals, families have them. So like you need to have a set of core values. And I find a lot of companies do, but if you're a smaller company, if you're a startup, if you're new, if you just haven't thought about it, that is always a really incredible place to start. If you do have core values, then sit with those and say, is this actually how we show up as a business? Not show up externally. I'm not talking about your public commentary. I'm saying within your company, look at every one of those bullet points. How are we living this out? Is there a benefit to us including these in our business strategy? I would always say yes, but like, how do these live out in real time? Because I will tell you, I have worked with some companies where I talk to employees and then I read those core values and I'm like, these are two completely different companies. Like completely different companies. What people experience and what these bullet points say, like there's no intersection of them. And that means like there's a huge problem. So this week, like look at your core values and really ask yourself the hard questions. Like, is this how we show up as a company? Is this what our culture is? Is this what our employees experience? And then how do we now bring that into our business strategy, which then as a benefit will help your profits and it'll help your retention of your employees and it'll help attract high caliber talent to your company. I mean, it'll have a benefit on the financial side, but ultimately, like, do those things align? And a lot of times you'll find that they don't.
And I find that when I've hired based on just a resume, I mean, it can be incredibly competent, but when the values don't match, I've always encountered a wall. Like our goals, I have them here written on the wall, is laughter, commitment, perseverance, authenticity, courage, generosity, trust, personal growth,
Yes.
loyalty, and freedom. And we
Yeah.
always had others back. And when we map it out and, put Cindy, Sandy, Johnny, Peter, everybody that we have now checks the thing. And when somebody stops checking we ask, like, what's going on? Is something happening in your life? Is this
Yeah.
temporary, or did you just run out of juice? And if people run out of juice, it's fine. What's not fine is to drag people along that are going to anchor the entity to keep you back, hold you back. Or I always say we're all paddling and we have one canoe and our paddles need to be rowing in the same direction. If you don't want to paddle, lift your paddle, but please don't paddle backwards. It gets messy.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it's so important. And what I love about what you just said is that like that's where like real alignment of values meets, is that the expectation isn't just what employees can expect to feel from the company, but what the company expects to get from employees too. You want people to show up who align with those values, right? Like who can show up from that lens and be authentically who they are, and that's who they are, and it matches. So for purpose and that sort of intersection. Now, I would love to know if you bring those values when you think about your own business planning and your own business strategy. Are you pulling in those values and thinking about how those show up in a way that can actually help your company overall?
Yeah, no,
We
and
can talk about that later.
that's a whole nother conversation. Anna, I always promise to not make it too long. Thank you so much for being here. An
Yeah,
absolute
thank you.
pleasure. We managed to get it coordinated and in place. It was
I know.
different, but
It was a feat, but we did it.
we did it. Well, thank you so much. I look forward to our next conversation. It was an absolute treat, and we'll be talking soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I've loved this. I appreciate you.
Well, that was Anna Blue of Blue Moss Group, and I hope you're walking away with more than inspiration. The message is clear, and if you want to thrive and thrive long term, you cannot afford to leave your house messy. Whether that's your business strategy, your finances, or your personal legacy, ask yourself, where are the gaps? Where do you need to focus? What's out of sync between what you say and what you actually do? Because getting your house in order isn't just a one time project, it's an ongoing discipline. If today's episode resonated or sparked ideas or even uncomfortable questions, those are my favorite. Good. That's the starting point. I'm Elke Rubach, and this has been Get Your House in Order. Until next time, and live with clarity and act with purpose. Make sure that your house is truly in order. Until next time, live with clarity, act with purpose, and make sure that your house is truly in order. Bye-bye.